I was just an older black guy, pushing into my late 50s, working myself down to the bone in a rough little town outside Chicago. My boss, a cold man named Rick Turner, never missed a chance to remind me I was slow, worn out, and barely worth the paycheck. I never fought back, I just kept my head down and got through each shift, the limp in my leg nagging at me from years of factory work. One bitter winter night, the kind where the wind cut straight through a coat, I was heading home. The street smelled of smoke and iron, people rushing by without a glance, leaving the forgotten behind. I passed a narrow alley behind a diner, the hum of the freezers mixing with the whistle of the wind, and that's when I saw them, 2 kids huddled by a dumpster. They were pale, trembling, wearing nothing but rags. The boy had his arm wrapped around his little sister, trying to shield her from the cold. I stopped. I could have kept walking, the way everyone else did. My boss's voice echoed in my head, "Don't waste time on strays. You can barely take care of yourself." And he wasn't wrong. Most nights, my meals were scraps, my apartment barely warm. But looking at those kids, something stronger than hunger pushed at me. I crouched down, knees popping, and they looked up at me with eyes that seemed far too old for their small faces. "You two got anywhere to go?" I asked quietly. The boy didn't speak, just shook his head. My breath hung in the air like smoke as I let out a slow sigh. I knew what it meant to be invisible, to be thrown aside. And there was no way I was leaving them there. Not that night. "Come on," I said, holding out a rough, calloused hand. The boy hesitated, but the girl reached out first, her little fingers icy cold in my palm. That was all it took. By the time we reached my cramped apartment, neighbors were already whispering behind cracked doors. "There goes that fool again," one muttered. "Can't even keep his own lights on and now he's dragging strays home." Another laughed. "He's gonna sink with them." I heard it all, but I kept moving, 2 fragile lives following right behind me. My place wasn't much, peeling wallpaper, a couch that sagged, and a single heater that rattled more than it warmed, but it was better than the street. I threw blankets on the couch, heated some broth, and watched those kids eat like they hadn't seen food in days. That night, as I sat in the corner rubbing my bad leg, I thought about how my boss would tear into me again tomorrow, how the money was going to stretch thinner than ever. But none of that mattered. Those kids wouldn't be sleeping on frozen concrete anymore, not as long as I was breathing. And that quiet promise I made to myself that night? It was the start of something bigger than I could have ever imagined. The steel plant was like a beast that never slept, its air thick with the smell of scorched metal and grease. Every crash of machinery rattled my bones. My boss, Rick Turner, seemed to live for moments when he could cut me down. He'd wait until the floor was quiet before letting his voice slice through the noise. "Green, even those 2 kids you dragged home could move faster than you." The other workers would chuckle, some nervous, others eager to join in. I never answered back. Just wiped the sweat off my face and kept going, carrying every insult home with me, the limp in my leg reminding me of every long year I'd spent breaking my body for a paycheck. But the weight always felt lighter when I opened my door at night. Those kids were waiting. Daniel, the older one, usually had a book in his hand, ready to tell me what he'd learned at school. His little sister, Emily, would be sitting at the crooked table, a stub of a pencil in her hand, drawing houses brighter and warmer than any place we'd ever lived. When the cupboards were nearly bare, I gave them my share. I stitched Daniel's jacket with clumsy hands, saved loose change to buy Emily shoes. On nights when the heater coughed its last breath, I pulled them close, pretending I wasn't cold too. The neighbors whispered. In the stairwells, at the corner store, they talked. "He's gonna lose everything messing with those kids," one woman muttered as I passed. Another man smirked. "A black man raising 2 white kids. They'll turn on him the first chance they get." I heard them, but I never answered. Instead, I poured myself into those kids. I taught Daniel how to change a tire, how to shake a hand like he meant it. I showed Emily how to stretch $1, how to stand tall even when the world tried to shrink her. But Turner never let me forget who signed the checks. The one time I asked for a day off to take Emily to the clinic, he sneered. "You're not their father. Stop playing hero and get back to work." I went anyway. Took her hand and walked her to the doctor, knowing it would cost me. That night, when my paycheck came short, I folded the slip and kept it quiet. The years kept stacking, sacrifice on top of sacrifice. The kids grew. Daniel, sharp-eyed and sharper-minded, earned scholarships Turner swore he'd never see. Emily, once the quiet girl with stubby pencils, became a fighter in school debates, unafraid to defend the family everyone doubted. I watched them with quiet pride, even as my limp grew worse and my back bent further. They stood taller every day, and for the first time, I believed maybe kindness wasn't wasted. Maybe I'd planted something that would grow far beyond me. But Turner was watching too, and bitterness rotted him. By the time Daniel and Emily left for college, my body carried decades of hard work, hands like stone, steps slower, back bent, but my heart swelled every time a letter arrived. Daniel studying law. Emily chasing stories as a journalist. I pinned their letters to the wall like medals. Turner didn't soften. If anything, the years hardened him. He hated the way I walked a little straighter when their names came up. Hated hearing the whispers that those kids were going places. To him, it was proof I'd taken pride I didn't deserve. And one fall morning, he struck. I came home to find 2 cops waiting at my door, uniforms pressed, faces cold. A neighbor peeked through her blinds, muttering, "Knew it. Always said he'd get caught." The officers didn't waste time. They shoved past me, tore through my tiny apartment, and from under the couch they pulled a bag stuffed with cash and tools stamped with the factory's name. My stomach dropped. I'd never seen it before. But none of that mattered. Within hours, I was in cuffs, the steel biting into my wrists. Turner was standing outside the plant, arms crossed, smirking as they led me away. "Kindness doesn't pay, Green," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Some laughed. Most just looked away. The courtroom smelled like varnish and dust. I sat hunched at that defense table, my shoulders slumped like they carried every year of factory work and every insult Rick Turner ever threw my way. The prosecutors talked like I was some bitter old thief, a man too broken to make an honest living. They had witnesses, workers Turner had clearly paid off, claiming they'd seen me sneaking around storage rooms. The benches behind me were full of faces whispering. "Knew he was too good to be true," someone muttered. "Bet those kids he raised don't even know who he really is," another said. I kept my mouth shut. God knows I wanted to yell, to tell them everything, but too many years of swallowing my pride had trained me into silence. And I couldn't drag Daniel and Emily into this mess. Better they stayed far away, never seeing me like this. When the judge's gavel struck and said I could be looking at life in prison, the air in the room seemed to shrink. My eyes dropped to the floor. My chest felt heavy with a thought I didn't want to admit: maybe Turner was right. Maybe men like me were never meant to rise. And then the back doors opened. 2 figures walked in, calm, steady, like they owned the room. Daniel. Emily. Not the shivering kids I once found by a dumpster, but grown now, strong, confident, shaped by the very sacrifices I thought they'd forgotten. The gallery stirred. Whispers turned to gasps. For the first time, Turner's smug grin faltered. My heart tightened. I hadn't wanted them to see me like this. But as Daniel dropped a thick stack of legal papers on the defense table and Emily lifted a small recorder, scanning the room like a hawk, I realized something I'd never let myself believe: my kindness hadn't been wasted. It had come back to stand with me. The place was alive now, buzzing as Daniel straightened his tie and stepped forward. Gone was the quiet boy who once hid in alleys. He stood tall, voice clear, introducing himself as my attorney. The sound of files hitting the table was like a shot fired. Emily wasn't just there to watch, she was working too, her recorder blinking red. She'd made a name as a journalist, and now her aim was squarely at Turner. The prosecutor tried to keep his rhythm, but Daniel dismantled him piece by piece. Witnesses cracked under his questions, one admitted he'd only heard rumors, another stumbled over his own lies. Daniel cut through their case like a blade. Then Emily stood, asking to present evidence. It was a report she'd written, full of documents exposing Turner's own corruption, wage theft, harassment, falsified records, all backed up with proof. Murmurs swept the courtroom. Turner's face turned the color of iron in a forge, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles went white. I sat there stunned, my eyes stinging. Those kids I thought I'd lost to the world were here, fighting battles with the fire I'd unknowingly passed to them. The judge leaned back, tapping a pen, taking it all in. Finally, he spoke. This entire case, he said, voice carrying, is nothing but manipulation. He looked at me, then at Turner. Charges dismissed. The room erupted, gasps, clapping, a few angry shouts aimed at Turner as he stormed out, beaten. Daniel rested a hand on my shoulder. Emily stepped close and whispered, "You don't have to carry it alone anymore, Dad." That word, Dad, was louder than the gavel that freed me. Neighbors who once mocked us stayed quiet. Reporters scribbled like mad. And me? For the first time in years, I straightened my back, looked the world in the eye. I had once pulled 2 kids out of the cold. 20 years later, they pulled me out of a cage. Kindness doesn't die. It waits. It grows. And when the moment comes, it saves.